It's getting close to autumn. You know what that means. For most, it's getting cooler. The trees are going through a midlife crisis, and you suddenly start buying every cool hoodie and jacket you could come across. Because why the hell not? It also means that the food you eat starts to change a bit too. It happens like clockwork. You start to stop grilling, but not completely. You start to use your oven a little bit more, maybe, and you start adding more comforting, hearty meals to your schedule. Those hearty meals are something to look forward to. You know the feeling. You get home, you clean yourself up, and you rest for a little bit, and at dinner time, you dish out a hot plate or bowl filled with delicious, soul-warming food that you can spoon into your mouth as you watch TV. For a little bit, you're in the moment. All that matters is the dinner you look forward to all day, after however stressful the day has been. But sometimes you don't just use that meal as a highlight. Sometimes, as the season changes, you don't feel 100%. Sometimes that same pick-me-up will not only nourish your soul, but your body just as much. For some reason, to me, I look at soups in this regard. I eat a lot of soups, and when I am not feeling the best, it comforts me to pull together some vegetables, a bit of meat, and bits of bone and spices to create something that will give me the solace and peace of mind that autumn tends to give me. In that spirit, I think one of the most heart and soul-warming soups that anyone can put together is the king of sick day meals, Chicken Noodle Soup. It goes without saying, many of us have gotten a bowl of this stuff in some way. Maybe your parents had been cooking it up for hours before dinner, or maybe you ripped into a pack of top ramen at some point. It's all ubiquitous and has the same level of comfort. Today, let's get a bit cozy and make a bowl of nourishing, calming, and relaxing chicken noodle soup. Alright, look. Soup is nothing new in the grand scheme of things. It's an ancient design. You take ingredients and put them all into a pot of boiling water. The water softens things up, and when it's all done, you've effectively married the ingredients together in a broth that embodies what you put into it. It's simple, really. How can that fail? I don't see how it could fail. Now, to be real with you, there are truly ways for this to fail, but if you've been following my channel for a bit, you can see that I'm trying to set you up for success in the kitchen. So, let's get into things. The components for soup are something that's not exactly set in stone, but it goes something like this. Vegetables or protein of some kind are dropped into a pot of boiling water. From there, you can add a multitude of grains, aromatics, herbs, spices, and whatever else you want to pull together something that's better than the sum of its parts. It's simple and not only keeps one warm, but well fed with a variety of sources of protein and calories that will keep you moving in the toughest of times. Our ancestors likely did this out of necessity, cooking the items they had on hand to maybe stretch them out, or maybe to ensure what they had on hand was palatable for them to eat. A few root vegetables, maybe some game meat, and a handful of herbs could be put into a pot with water and cooked down for dinner in no time at all. Whatever the case may be, this led to a lot of customization and options to make soup an everyman's meal. It didn't matter if you had a few scraps or a menagerie of food in your pantry, you could make something for you and your own no matter what you had. From there, we see, in this context, the idea of soup must be pretty old. In fact, we apparently have found soup bowls from as early as 20,000 BC. But then again, this is what we've just found so far. So okay, we've had some basic history, but soups obviously have branched out from the basics we've discussed, right? Well yeah, in fact, the further away from ancient history we go, we can find instances where soups were more and more distinguished by not only the culture, but the items put into them as well. Now, I've said all of this before in my fried chicken video, but chicken is an international powerhouse. No matter where you go, if humanity is there, chicken is somewhere nearby. It's not hard to imagine then that for once again, we find our beloved avian present in soups all over the world. From the east, you may find a flavorful bowl of tori python that uses the bones of the bird to make a delicious ramen. Eggdrop soup not only uses the broth of the chicken, but the eggs of the bird as well. Go figure. We even have chicken broth granules that are used to flavor things with the essence of chicken soup itself. Likewise, in the West, it's highly fashionable to use chicken in a similar way, but by changing the ingredients a little bit. Carrots, onion, and celery lead the traditional charge in this way to honor the French mirepoix all over the Western world. It is then where we add noodles of some sort to create something that is of peak comfort and deliciousness. This is where we're going to be building today's recipe. It's going to be simple, effective, and not only warm and comforting, but it probably reminds many of us of what a sick day or a cold evening is all about. To a degree anyway. Chicken noodle soup, as it sounds, doesn't have many components in the grand scheme of things. However, I've been making this for quite a while, so we're going to make this as flavorful as we can, without breaking your wallet in the process, of course. Our soup then is going to be broken down into a few portions: the broth, the noodles, and the soup fillers. The broth is going to be super flavorful and will be similar to my gumbo video. It'll ensure the broth is going to be as intense as we can make it. The noodles are simple, we're just going to use something store-bought this time around. Finally, the soup fillers are what we'll be using to fill our stomachs. This is pretty traditional chicken soup with the mirepoix trio of celery, onion, and carrots to flavor our broth and the contents inside of it. Oh yeah, we're going to be using chicken too. I mean, it's got to be chicken soup, right? So let's hop right into cooking with the familiar set piece. I have here a whole rotisserie chicken that could likely be bought at any store. This will provide us with both our chicken component, but just as important, our stock. We'll start by taking this roasted bird and taking it apart, shredding the meat into nice ribbons by hand. Be sure to separate the bones and the flesh. We'll be using the bones here to make ourselves a chicken stock and the flesh as our chicken. When the bones and meat are separated, place said bones into a large pot, being sure to admire each and every one you put in for some reason. You'll fill the pot with cold water, enough to cover the bones, and set it on the stove. I'm going to be trying something different with this soup stock and allow it to gently cook the bones for a time before we contend with our vegetables. All we're doing is setting the heat to medium-low and allow the liquid to come up to temperature. Once we see wisps of steam coming from the stock, we'll set the heat to low and place a lid on the pot. We'll let this go for a few hours, waving goodbye while we relax and check in on our good burb in a few hours. While we have some time, I'm going to prepare the vegetables for my soup stock. Today I'm going with 1 large onion, chopped into quarters, 2 heads of garlic sliced in 2, a few bunches of green onion chopped roughly, and 2 whole carrots also chopped roughly. Be sure to give these items a wash before slicing them up and setting them aside for later. After the chicken carcass has made your house smell like heaven for around 3 or more hours, give it a checkup. As you can see, the soup stock is golden and clear. The gentle steep has extracted the chicken's soul but prevented the carcass from breaking down, leaving the liquid beautifully clear. I'm going to wreck it and mess with it a bit, ruining this house and everything we've built upon it, while I remove the chicken like an uninformed slob. When the bones are removed, we'll replace them with our chopped vegetables from earlier, gently placing them into the stock. I'm also adding a few fresh bay leaves and placing them into the pot before turning the heat back up to medium-low and letting this simmer for around an hour and a half to no more than 2 hours. While we wait, let's prepare our filler items to ensure the final cook goes smoothly. I've got my French mirepoix, which is carrot, celery, and onion here. Unlike the Cajun Trinity, this group is a bit more ubiquitous in regular kitchens and impart a ton of flavor. For a regular chicken soup, I'm going to break down and mince 1 large onion and slice up 6 ribs of these pre-trimmed celery stalks. I've got a package of sliced carrots on the sidelines to make my life easier, but if you can't find that, just use 2 to 3 carrots peeled and slice them how you see fit. Now, this next ingredient is negotiable, but then again, this is my house, so I'm going to stand 10 toes down when I say I'm adding mushrooms to my soup. 12 of them to be precise. If you don't like them, don't add them, but I will slightly judge you for your crimes against the Noodledog. If you're adding them, give them a wipe down, cleaning them of dirt and debris before slicing them nice and thin. With all of this done, we just need to wait a little bit longer to complete the final stage of the main course. After 2 hours, the vegetables have given off a considerable amount of flavor and have deeply flavored the soup stock. Strain the liquid through a fine mesh sieve and into another pot. Clean the now empty pot out and put it onto the stove to begin our soup properly. Turn the stove up to medium-high and add a teaspoon or 2 of oil to the soup pot. When the oil has heated up, add the diced onion from earlier. I'm also adding a large pinch of salt and a teaspoon or so of black pepper before cooking the onion for around 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, you'll want to add minced garlic. I have jarred garlic, but you can use fresh if you'd like. Add it to the pot and let it cook until fragrant, around a minute or so. When the onions and garlic are smelling nice and lovely, I'll add both the celery and my mushrooms. Again, if you don't like mushrooms, that's alright, but just keep in mind, I'm judging you a bit. Let this cook for a minute or so before finally adding the sliced carrots into the pot. The last thing the soup will need for now is the stock we've made earlier. Bring the chicken stock you've made over carefully and transfer it into the soup pot. With the soup now in one pot, set the heat to high and begin the cooking process from anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. While the soup comes up to temp, I've got one more ingredient I'm adding to ensure we hit maximum flavor. This is chicken bouillon paste. It's basically chicken stock that's been cooked down into a paste. I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of this paste, adding about a cup of water for each spoon to ensure the flavor isn't too concentrated. Give the soup a taste as you go, and when the salt and other flavor levels are to your liking, we'll stop adding seasoning. With this, we wait for the soup to begin to boil before dropping the heat to low and placing the lid on to let this cook for about an hour or so. In the last 15 minutes cooking, add the shredded chicken to the pot. Since the chicken is already cooked, we don't want to boil this too much. It'll get real stringy. Also, while the chicken warms in the stock, we'll begin cooking our noodles. Whatever noodles you have, add water to a pot and salt the water accordingly. Cook the noodles to package direction and keep an eye on them so they don't overcook. Finally, I'm going to quickly make a grilled ham and cheese sandwich. This is super simple. Just use your bread of choice and layer on the cheese. I'm using American ham, and more cheese. Put a pan on the stove and set the heat to low and add salted butter and oil to a pan. From there, just keep an eye on the sandwich. Toast both sides, and when the cheese is melted, pull it from the pan. By now, your noodles should be nice and tender. Drain said noodles and grab some dining ware because it's finally time to plate. We'll start by adding some noodles to this tiny ass bowl I knew better than to fill. We'll then ladle some soup into the same small ass bowl until our bowl is nice and full. With this, our soup is done and we have ourselves something we can really be proud of. Let me just add a little bit of black pepper on top and make it look all chef-like. There we go. In tasting this soup, it's hot, sure, but it's genuinely comforting. It reminds me of my childhood in all the right ways. It's the perfect meal to freeze for a cold night or a sick day when you need a serious pick-me-up. I burned my grilled cheese a little bit, but it's still good, so I can't complain about that. If you want to add parsley or green onions to the top of this, the freshness would really be welcome. But then again, you can't get more cozy than this right here. Except if it was like 30 degrees cooler outside, that'd be really good. And that's it. This video is a little bit longer, but I really enjoyed this recipe. Chicken soup is genuinely a comfort food we all have some version of in our minds. I'm just sharing a bit of myself with you in this one. If you haven't had chicken soup like this, give it a try. I think you'd really like this. And it'll ensure you have plenty of food for future use. If you have any other soups I should try, let me know about them in the comments. I could always use a recipe to try. And with that, thanks a lot for watching. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more cooking videos coming soon enough. I've got more coming pretty soon, so stay tuned for more simple recipes like this. But until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you dogs later.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?